Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
And welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast, your go-to resource for hitting growth opportunities throughout online business. We're your hosts. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Sarah, and thanks for joining us for our latest episode. Today we'll be speaking with Jim Barton, the Senior Seller Advisor at Empire Flippers for now over 2.5 years. And he's an integral part of helping sellers reach their exit planning goals. Jim dives deep into the world of FBA and unpacks the questions that he helps FBA sellers with every single day. He also explores the typical price range that PE and high net worth investors are looking for and breaks down how FBA sellers can target these individuals when listing their business for sale on our marketplace.
Yeah, that's right. In this episode, Jim also breaks down how sellers can take the integral steps to listing their business for sale on our marketplace and some key improvements that they can do to help raise the valuation of their business within short months. With years of coaching experience, Jim has seen the growth trends in our marketplace, and he also discloses all you need to know about selling your first or 10th FBA asset to get the maximum profitability with minimal effort on your part. But we don't want to give away too much right now, so let's dig into the interview and see what Jim has to share. And at the end of the episode, we'll go over some of the best listings on the Empire Flippers marketplace that highlight the growth opportunities we've learned about here today. Now let's get started. And welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast. So we're really excited to have Jim Barton on the call with us today. And Jim, how are you doing today?
Excellent. Couldn't be better and very excited to be on the pod.
Yeah, it's really nice having you on the call. I'm really excited to talk to you about your experience in the online business space. But first, for our listeners, why don't you introduce us to who you are and where you are in the world currently?
Yeah, so I'm Jim Barton. I'm Senior Seller Advisor here at Empire Flippers. About 2 years ago, we kind of made the call to build out a team focused on sellers and working on exit planning. So that's primarily what I'm focused on. And yeah, I'm currently in Playa del Carmen in Mexico at the moment. So keeping it warm, keeping it close to the beach, and staying comfortable. There's a couple of us floating around here as well. So it's been nice to have a bit of a crew.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was awesome just being there with you a couple months ago. We had hookah on the beach for Thanksgiving. I mean, it was probably one of the better Thanksgivings I've had in a while. It definitely beats, just hanging out with the family and eating turkey.
Don't tell
and
your
having,
mom that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Instead of passing the mashed potatoes, you're passing the hookah, That's close, though.
Oh, yeah.
And then Sarah, you were here for New Year's too. So
yeah, I got to breeze through right before heading to Merida. So that was cool. Finally got to see the infamous Playa del Carmen, see what it's all about. It was really nice. I bumped into you guys completely at random. Didn't even plan it. Just saw you guys eating tacos. So I feel like that's a very, a very Empire Flippers thing to have happen.
Very
just end up in random country. Oh, half my team's here. Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one thing I miss for sure compared to, Brazil has amazing, meat selection and picanha and a lot of great food, but the taco stands, that was one thing I definitely miss about Mexico, having the taco stands on every corner.
Get tacoed out. Haven't hit that level yet.
Yep, definitely. Why don't you tell our listeners, Jim, a little bit of background story. How did you get started in working in the online business space?
Yeah, so I initially went through the whole thing where I discovered sort of like the digital nomad lifestyle and really wanted to do that. I had a pretty boring corporate job. And so I was working on starting a dropshipping business. That was fairly successful. It was at least enough to understand the industry and how things work. And most importantly, figure out paid ads. And then I used that to do some consulting for some brands because I particularly focused on Google Shopping ads, which is a very particular type of PPC that not everybody is specializing in. And yeah, at some point I saw sort of the opportunity from Empire Flippers about hiring business analysts. That's essentially our sales team here. We're the ones sort of massaging the deal, or in my case, getting sellers ready to list. And I had a bit of an entrepreneurial mentor that sort of told me, in every entrepreneur's career, you should probably have some sort of sales experience. And that's where I decided to, go for the opportunity. And it's been a nice ride ever since.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an awesome story. And being able to work online and remotely, especially, has been a huge life changing event for myself as well. Going from a construction warehouse background and,
Yeah.
after the military into working remotely, it's been kind of all of the boxes I wanted to have from the military without having, some of the issues with that line of work.
Right.
But that's really awesome to hear, how you got into the online business space and now working with Empire Flippers on more of the seller side. And to the best of my understanding, you're primarily focused with a lot of FBA sellers. Is that correct?
It's been the biggest driver of growth for us, over the last few years, and especially in the last, let's say 2 quarters, things are going crazy a bit. We're having more and more of these private equity groups come in and raising investment, looking to acquire all the FBA businesses. And so, yeah, we're working to help sellers realize that they're sitting on a very nice asset, a very attractive asset for these buyers.
Yeah, it's a very lucrative market. And as we've seen over the years, multiples increasing for these types of assets. It's only going to continue to grow as more and more people are starting to realize the benefit of having an online asset or having online businesses in general. So my question for you, Jim, what is some of the most common concerns that you're getting from FBA sellers looking to exit their business for, a large capital gain, potentially roll into another passion project that they might be working on?
Yeah, so I guess a few things. One is really, it depends on kind of what level you're at. I notice on the lower end of FBA businesses, let's say like sub 500K in list price, tend to a lot of times come in and not really understand their numbers or not have a firm grasp of numbers. So that's one thing I always advise is whether you do it with us, ideally you would be working with your accountant or bookkeeper, but really understanding where you're at and having a P&L somewhat ready to go in accrual format is really going to put you in a good position to understand where the business is going and whether it is a good time to sell the business. Other thing they ask a lot is, hey, what do I need to prepare? I think it's going to be this whole ordeal, and it is a good bit of work. Like, definitely don't want to brush over that. It's a lot of work, both on our end in the vetting process, where we help sellers prepare for sale, but also on the seller's end, right? Especially working out product landed costs for each SKU and coming down to an accurate cost of goods sold number. That being said, I would say don't overthink it too much. Our vetting team is going to hate me for this, but it's what we're here to help you for. So if you don't quite have a complete firm grasp of what your numbers are and what is going to be applicable in the P&L, come to us, talk to me, schedule a call with us. We'll work it out. We get you sorted out. Don't overthink it too much. And last point I'll bring up in sort of exit planning and what sellers are concerned about, particularly with FBA sellers, is when to sell. And I would make the correlation to, selling a stock, right? You want to sell high, sell into strength is what I usually say. So I know a lot of times sellers think there's more they could grow, there's more they could do. Typically, that ends up being a really good time to sell. Selling a growing asset is going to put you in the best position. This is going to be more attractive for buyers as well. So you really want to make sure if you are going to continue to grow the business, you're always taking on the risk of something happening, more competitors coming into the space. If you have multiple projects, you might not be able to actually put enough attention into the business. All that should be taken into consideration for when you're looking to exit. And like I said, look to sell into strength.
That's great advice, Jim. And I guess I got fixated on what you were saying earlier. Kind of want to dig into this in my next question. This idea that we've got a marketplace almost in flux. There's a lot of changes happening, and that's due to private equity coming in and getting really aggressive on these large FBA acquisitions. And I was kind of wondering, you're working with sellers every single day and you're working with FBA sellers at all levels, but for FBA businesses that, I guess range on the higher side of 500K and up, obviously in the multi-million-dollar range, how is your coaching of these sellers kind of being influenced by the changes on our marketplace with the influx of PE coming in?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. I would say, one, you're going to be dealing with different sets of buyers. I would say typically sub 750K, maybe sub 500K is typically going to go to more of like a independent buyer or someone that has put together a small fund. It might even be one of their first few acquisitions at that level. So yeah, a bit of a different experience for our the $1 million plus 750K plus into the multi-million in list price type businesses. Then they're dealing more with a mature private equity group. They have made multiple acquisitions. We've probably worked with them on a number of deals as well. It's usually a bit of a smoother process, but you're also looking at a bit of a different process as well. So they're going to want some sort of version of exclusive due diligence. So that's something to be prepared for, something like 30, 45 days sometimes. So that's typical, whereas in the lower end, typically that's not done or isn't as common. So that'd probably be at least top of mind things to think about in terms of like different levels. The other thing would be on the lower end, you probably have more space to expand and grow. I find that once you're hitting that kind of like $1 million plus, list price, you've probably explored the industry enough and know kind of the opportunities within, product launches that you could do before actually, kind of realizing this is a mature asset and maybe it's time to look to sell.
Awesome. This is something that we've talked about some other people before, but I'd still love to get your take. So, for all those sort of preparations that sellers have to make coming in, why should it matter for them if they're trying to catch the eye of private equity or they're trying to make sure all their ducks in a row? Why would it benefit them to, say, be working with someone like you early on in the process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always advise people, give us a call as early, as you feel necessary. We're always happy to have very early conversations some people don't even know they can sell or they've just discovered that as an option. And we're happy to sort of let them know what's going on in the market and how to kind of gear up for that and have the mindset of selling the business. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. Like you said, it's like people, they just kind of don't know. It's like this service that's available to them that can kind of make a huge difference down the road, and why would you not? I'm wondering, for, let's say there's some people listening to this and they're pumped, like, great, I had no idea that I could take advantage of something like exit planning. What advice would you give to a seller who might want to take advantage of exit planning, a year out or less, just to make sure that they're really getting the most out of the process?
Yeah, so a couple things, and some of these answers aren't going to be as sexy as people think. I think one misconception is a focus on revenue, whereas really buyers are looking at the bottom line. They're looking at net profit. So a lot of times sellers want to expand into a new market and expand into new sales channels, Walmart, eBay, Wayfair, other, sort of kind of coming at it from an omni-channel focus. That's all great, but honestly, I find that through my experience, you're lucky if you get 10% of your sales off of Amazon. That would be an average to good number to achieve. Even though there's a lot of focus in the FBA space of trying to diversify a bit, I find for the most part, you're probably better off just doing whatever you were doing best to make money. So focusing on profit and finding the easiest way per your skill set to get there. So if that's just launching more products in the same space and making tweaks and making design enhancements, I would go that route over trying to expand out. Second big one, again, not really sexy, but just avoiding stockouts, just tight inventory management. Yeah, I know this was a big challenge for Amazon sellers during COVID for multiple reasons and for supply chain breakdowns in China, but losing sales because of stockout issues, it's always a bummer because obviously the seller feels that they're going to be missing out on opportunity and, hey, I would have made X amount more sales had I been in stock, but the buyer has to make a purchase based on track record. They can't justify it to their investors otherwise. So we have to do valuations and buyers are going to be purchasing based on what actually happened and not potential. So avoiding stockouts is a big one. And last thing, maybe less pertinent to Amazon, but to e-commerce in general, is avoiding sort of like crazy marketing experiments or, sort of thing. You don't want to kind of throw a wrench into the whole works in a year or less, because that's actually kind of where you want to keep things tight, keep things very stable, because we're going to be basing the valuation off of the trailing 12 months typically. So that would be kind of the three main points I would give to sellers.
Yeah, on the stock out note, just something I was thinking about this week as I was doing a bit of writing kind of around this concept of these bigger buyers coming in and scooping up FBA while they can. It's like you said, a lot of the stock issues that sellers would have faced this year is kind of beyond their control. It's all COVID related. And I think what really blows my mind is things could have been quite dire for FBA at a certain point this year. It was looking quite dire, right? It's like you've got all these businesses. Mm-hmm. Are you essential? Are you non-essential? Okay. And then you move on from that to all of a sudden everybody is stocking out like mad and they can't seem to keep stuff on their shelves. And then to really end up where we are this year, where we've got huge demand. Things are going swimmingly for FBA. It's kind of amazing because you wouldn't have predicted that less than a year ago, to say like, after all these challenges, you're actually going to be doing better than ever. I don't know, maybe it's just more of a hypothetical point, but I do think that's just wild. And I'm sure that you've been somebody who's coaching sellers every day, probably help people through very different stages throughout this year, right?
Exactly. And it's been such an interesting, it was a bit of a black swan event, obviously having a worldwide pandemic, and it happened to, frankly, for the most part, at least, work out fairly well for Amazon sellers and, of course, Amazon in general. As retail stores are closed down, everybody's starting to purchase online. But it depended on what vertical, right? So there was the issue with non-essential products not being able to be kept in stock. There was the supply chain issues in China. So there was a lot of interesting challenges that Amazon sellers faced this year. And the ones that prevailed are doing really well. And again, I would put this back into tight inventory management. I know a lot of sellers are constrained on capital, and that's where a lot of these private equity groups shine, is they have the capital. They have the ability to pick up a it's not called a distressed asset, but one that didn't quite meet its full potential, and they're able to instantly inject cash and run with it. So it's been really interesting to see the Amazon marketplace not only mature, but kind of overcome a very trying time this year in 2020.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's relating back to your earlier point, is when is the best time to sell? And, obviously one of the best times to sell is when your business is growing and when it looks like it's got, solid runway. It's like picking up on if this is the right time to sell your FBA business, just based on how, obviously for some businesses, how amazingly it's going. This is the time to potentially exit to a group that's got the capital to take you to the next step, so on and so forth. So yeah, it's just, gosh, what a moment I think that we're in right now that we couldn't have ever predicted less than a year ago, but here we are.
Yeah, it was a different picture in Q1 compared to Q4, let's say, of 2020. So,
oh my gosh, yeah. If only our Q4 selves could have just talked to our Q1 selves, that would have been really nice.
right.
So kind of a switch of subject here, still about FBA. I was wondering if you could talk to me a little bit about this is of course kind of geared toward our buyers, but just what our automated offer button does. And so why would this be important for those looking for an FBA asset that's, under the 100K price range?
Yeah, this is a good one. We get a lot of buyer interest in sort of the sub 100K range, sub 150K range in list price. And anytime we have that conversation, we make it very clear that's probably the most competitive space to be in, because there's just more capital at that level available, right? So in that case, it's really important that you get your funds verified, schedule a call with us, get your liquidity verified, and more than likely you're going to want to have credit on file, meaning you want to have enough cash on file with us to just hit that button and win the business. And again, it's a bummer. We see new buyers are really interested in a business. They've been monitoring the marketplace for months, maybe even quarters, and they see the perfect business fits all their criteria, and it just gets taken out from underneath them from another buyer that already had funds with us. So that would be probably my biggest piece of advice for them. And we call this the wire race. You guys have written about this multiple times. Yeah. So when it comes to that, the best way to do that is get credit on file and be prepared, because some of these businesses will sell not only the same week but even the same day. But less in the e-commerce space. But yeah, be prepared for that and look to get set up earlier rather than later.
Yeah, I think that's a good note, because I like to pay attention to what businesses are being scooped up fast. Even FBA, like an FBA under 100,000, can be a great asset to many buyers, because they're just looking, to get something that they might have the capital in hand, and they can go ahead and sort of bypass that initial, obviously the hurdles of starting an FBA business themselves. I think we don't see as many businesses sometimes in that range, but when they do, they seem to be scooped up really fast. So this idea of winning the wire race, it's more important than ever. On that note, because you mentioned, obviously this process of winning the wire race, having credit on file, can we talk a little bit more about verified liquidity? We don't have to go too in depth on this, but I was wondering if you could walk us through kind of what this verified liquidity requirement is, and, how does that affect how things sort of play out on our marketplace. And, I'm not sure if you can sort of take this in the direction of how this might affect, say, sellers, and is there a reason that they should be excited about this step in the process?
Sure, that is a great question, actually. So we have a process now where we need to verify liquidity from buyers. So we actually need to see, either a bank statement or something that indicates you have the funds to purchase businesses that are in your price range. I think it's about 70% of the list price you're looking at, and that's because that's sort of a typical earnout scenario, and we can cover that later too if you guys want to talk about deal structure. And the way that helps sellers, and this is actually a common concern from sellers, is who's actually going to be, when we post my business on the marketplace, who's going to actually be able to see this, right? And we're actually protecting their information. All that's available are the numbers and a description. Buyers need to have verified liquidity before even reviewing the business. So that's how we're protecting sellers' information. There's no window shoppers here. And very likely also we keep, our buy side analysts keep great relationships with our buyers as well. So likely we're going to be working with these people repeatedly and helping them find a business that fits their criteria. We're going to know that they're serious, essentially. That's kind of how verified liquidity keeps our sellers feeling safe on the marketplace.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. There's no window shoppers here. I know we often use the phrase tire kickers, but it's probably something we should be working a bit more. So obviously you got a lot on the line and you want to get this deal rolling, and window shoppers are going to be slowing down the process. Kind of on the same note, I know we're sort of talking about high level things on our marketplace. I think this one's good to dig into because there has been changes to this, I would say definitely in the past year. What about our exclusivity period and how that's changed? Can you just walk me through what that is, how long it is, and basically how that's working right now?
Yeah, this is something we thought a lot about as well because, our big goal here, especially in terms of dealing with sellers, is we want to be the no-brainer place for you to list your business. And part of that, we realized, the exclusivity period is definitely factored into that. So essentially, it just means that, hey, we've invested time and preparation into getting your business ready for sale. We want to make sure that it's worth our time, here at Empire Flippers. So typically what that looks like is some period of time where you just can't list the business elsewhere or sell it off market. And typically that's not been much of an issue. And so that's why we had our exclusivity period at 6 months. And now we've decreased that down to a very aggressive, I would say, 2 months. And that's basically because we're pretty confident we can move a quality business in 2 months or less. So this is essentially Empire Flippers saying, hey, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. And we're going to shorten that exclusivity period and make sure you feel that there's not going to be that much risk in working with us. If we really can't find a buyer in that amount of time, you're welcome to move on. That being said, some businesses are going to take a bit of time too. So, we hope that you stay the course and are sort of receptive to market feedback as well.
Yeah, it's a really solid point that you bring up, Jim. Even just looking at our scoreboard right now, with currently having over 181,000 active buyers and sellers on our marketplace, pretty confident that we could say within that 2 months, we'll find you a buyer that's willing to give you full list price within that time range. And then offering the exclusivity, for due diligence as well is something that we also offer buyers that are wanting to take a serious look and dig deeper into the P&Ls and a lot of the metrics behind these assets as well too.
Real quick, I'll piggyback off my own point. So let's say, you do have a private offer that someone has reached out to you cold and said, hey, I'm interested in your business. Let's talk. I have an offer. I would say you're likely going to be better off coming to a broker like Empire Flippers, because if you already have, cold interest like that right out of the gate, you might as well give it a shot on our marketplace. We're likely going to get you a higher payout, even with our commission. And, if it doesn't work out, then great, you can go with that private offer after exclusivity is over.
Yeah, absolutely. Having the option to ultimately start a bidding war for your business is where you should really be positioning your asset versus going with the first offer that comes to your email inbox just because some guy that happens to have a sub niche business that wants to piggyback off of his assets might offer you something that sounds good, but it would be at least in your best interest to see what other offers or even higher potential listing offers you might even be able to get on from such a large pool of investors within our ecosphere. Now, on the subject, Jim, of like this large pool of investors that we have currently on our marketplace, what types of price ranges do you see now, maybe from sellers coming in or wanting to exit their FBA assets? Do you see more of the sub 100K FBA listings coming into the market, or do you see more 6-figure plus assets coming in. Now that people are starting to figure out how to set a moat around their brands and create more of a competitive market in FBA assets in general, or do you see more of a mix of these price ranges between, sub 6 and 7-figure plus assets?
Yeah, so I think across the board, we're seeing more Amazon FBA businesses come to the marketplace, and we are seeing multiples go up across the board. Generally speaking, as we get higher and higher in list price, typically the multiple can increase with that as well because there's more competition between these private equity groups coming into the space. They're taking on investment. Sometimes they're new funds and they need to get a deal. They need to get a win before they can raise more investment. And that's bumping up multiples. And we could segue into that. A year ago, even like 4 months ago, I would have said like 36x times monthly net profit would be a great multiple for an Amazon FBA business. Now we're seeing things go as high as 45x, even approaching 50x. So it's very interesting times. And kind of to your last point, as we talk about private offers being floated around to Amazon sellers, and you mentioned there being competition between buyers. It's definitely what we're seeing. Again, 1 year ago, maybe there was 3 big players in the private equity group or something that were buying up all the Amazon FBA businesses. Now it's more like 20 and more every day. They used to be primarily American. Now we're seeing this model being adapted in Europe as well. So it's growing everywhere. There's more and more competition. Definitely you're doing yourself a disservice, in my humble opinion, if you take probably what's going to be a lower off-market offer from one buyer versus coming to us and having 15, 20 of these guys compete for your business.
Yeah, that's a fact, actually. We've even heard of, some investors tell us, okay, if such and such, private equity firm makes an offer on this listing or any listing on your marketplace, let us know and we'll beat it. So that right there alone is evidence that there is a strong competition between these investors that are looking for high quality assets, especially within the FBA realm. Now, in your opinion, Jim, you've been with us over 2.5 years again. You have quite a bit of experience when it comes to helping sellers make sure they get the most from their exit. What is maybe an easy win that you've seen that could help FBA sellers exit for a larger list price, or maybe even exit for much more than what they had anticipated from the start?
Yeah. So, and again, maybe not super sexy answers, but I'm just going to give, based on all the conversations I've had, one, I'll shout from the rooftops, make sure you understand your numbers. I think this is less of an issue for our higher end FBA sellers. That's usually not a concern, but you need to understand your numbers and kind of where the business is at to make sure it makes sense to exit now. But in terms of kind of maximizing list price, some easy wins, maybe not easy, but wins that I would focus on, try to negotiate terms with your suppliers, get that cost of goods sold number down as much as you can, because we're going to be capturing what, the financial picture looks like for buyers in its current state. So that could drastically impact your valuation if you're able to get, your product landed cost down. And that's going to be higher profit margins. This is one of the first things buyers look at, is looking at nice, juicy margins there. Another big one, and something that maybe would take, this might be like a year plus out from a sale, looking at your brand and really asking yourself honestly, like, does this feel like a genuine brand? Well, our customers are going to recommend this to their friends and family. Could a community be born out of this brand? Really ask yourself that. We've actually seen buyers purchase an FBA business and then just do some rebranding, and it's grown or 2 or 3x even based off of that. So that'd be something else I would focus on. Again, we talked about inventory management, keeping that tight, and then making sure you're not losing out on sales that were going to happen anyway is going to be huge. If you have to order more inventory than is comfortable for you, it's okay. Inventory is going to be purchased by the buyer at landed cost, and that's on top of list price. So when you see the list price, that doesn't even include inventory, and we don't take a commission on the value of the inventory. And last one, and we talked about this a bit, but exit planning tends to be a bit of an emotional conversation. Sometimes I like to joke that I do entrepreneurial therapy. A lot of our sellers have different projects going on. They might have different brands that they're managing on Amazon. And sometimes it's hard to let these businesses go when it's peaking, but that's typically the best time to sell. And you really want to ask yourself, if you really believe you can grow this brand, you better have the interest and the energy level to actually follow through on that. And ask yourself that honest question. And if the answer is, you're not quite sure, then I would probably look to exit. And yeah, that typically tends to be a good time, because I've seen quite a bit, and I've been here for years now, is the guys that come in and say, oh, I'm definitely going to double X, triple X this business before selling. It's going to be great. Guess how many times I hear back from those guys? Not always the case, but yeah, it's always a shame when people get caught up in their sort of initial success, but they're also managing different projects and lose focus and kind of let an asset dwindle when it could have been, really premium, attractive asset for our buyers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I'm digging everything that you're putting out there. I think this is some good stuff. I feel like this is super helpful for our sellers who are interested in selling with us. We wrap these up with like a rapid fire little section of questions. So if you're down for that, I was wondering, what tools or resources do you use in your business life can just sort of help our buyers and sellers?
Yeah. So I guess, in sort of a very unique role, but I of course use Jungle Scout and their Chrome extension when looking at Amazon products. That always gives me at least kind of a rough idea of what's going on. Maybe this is a super obvious and ancient tool at this point, but I still am a big proponent of Evernote. I live out of Evernote. I've outsourced part of my brain to Evernote. I can always kind of dig in through notes and stuff like that. So
I'm the same.
Okay, awesome. So I'm not that much of a weirdo, hopefully.
No, I'm surprised more people don't use it. Yeah, it's awesome.
Always blows my mind, and there's probably better tools out there now. I know Roam is getting a lot of attention now. That's fascinating. I haven't tried it. Notion is another one that's getting a lot of attention, but Evernote's, it seems to work out for me. Now I use it. Another dumb one, maybe this is a personal one, but I use a website called World Time Buddy constantly, all the time, because our sellers are located everywhere across the globe, and I want to make sure we're scheduling meetings at accurate times, and I understand their time zone, that sort of thing. So might not, super helpful for sellers, but then again, if you're dealing with your manufacturers in different countries and stuff like that, that's a nice one as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a really helpful tool. I mean, Sarah and I both are constantly on the move and changing time zones quite often, I guess. So that's a really helpful tool I'm going to definitely look into further. Even trying to schedule calls with sellers per seller interviews and stuff, I'm constantly trying to figure out what their time zone is in comparison to Brazil. So that's a really good point. Now, so last rapid fire question for you, Jim. So what has been your funniest moment since you've started working online?
So I was trying to think about this one. I think the interesting one, it depends on how we can cut this if this isn't appropriate, but I mean, I'm on the seller side. We get meetings booked with all sorts of businesses. We disqualify or we choose to take a pass on businesses that aren't a great fit, and one of those being in the adult industry. So I'll get meetings booked with some very interesting websites and people in very interesting industries. I'll just say that. And it's always worth a giggle as to what is out there. So that's a consistent source of goofiness here.
Entertainment without going too deep, I guess. Yeah.
Right. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
And recently we've had a discussion on, somebody selling sex toys or something on Amazon, and it's if it doesn't break their terms of service, then it's a conversation we can have. So I'm there having various intense conversations with supply chain issues on sex toys. So wouldn't think I'd be doing that, but
I'm surprised that's a thing on Amazon. It's not too often you would see that pop up in the ads, I guess.
Well, actually, that's the thing is you can't use PPC for that particular
I'm
industry.
sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think when Vauda was on, I think for him, because, obviously you're dealing with a range. I think for him it was KDP, somebody selling romantic novels. And then he was getting a lot of romantic novels ads after that. And then, obviously having people online and sharing your screen. He was just like, no. I'm getting retargeted for, it's not me.
For some weird stuff.
Also, you guys definitely put up with a lot, but that's so super cool. Oh, great. So I think that pretty much wraps up our call. I've learned a lot today. And as always, just fun to have you on. Always a good time to catch up with you. So best of luck with everything in Playa del Carmen. And I'm sure a lot of busyness on the sales side.
Yes, absolutely. This has been a blast. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing here. And if anybody is interested in selling or having their initial, first conversation about selling, go to our website and look to book a call with us.
Absolutely. We can put we'll put the links in the show notes too.
Yeah, great.
Thanks again, Jim.
Hey everyone, as promised, now that we wrapped up the episode and learned a little bit more about how you can prepare your FBA business to catch the eye of high net worth investors, we wanted to connect you with some of the best listings in the Amazon FBA space. So first, we have listing 47853. It's an Amazon FBA and FBM business in the home and kitchenware niches. I picked a couple top bullets to sum up some of the things I liked about this listing. First and foremost, I love that it's just got great reviews and great feedback all around. So it's got 98% positive feedback for the seller account, which is great. And then the top selling product is an Amazon's Choice and has over 10,000 reviews at 4.6 stars. So excellent. And then, a lot of the other products that the business carries have thousands or hundreds of positive reviews. So pretty indispensable asset, I think, nowadays for FBA businesses. And this one's got all of those boxes ticked. In terms of team, there's a team of 6 to 7 employees who work on quality checking and packaging products. So doing some of that hands-on work with the business. And then finally, I really like that this is an evergreen niche and mix of products. So the business carries products that are used in the bedroom, around the home, in the kitchen, as well as clothing for various activities and professions. So if you were looking for, just something with a wide range of products and that you could really sort of dip your toe into a couple different niches, this would be a great business for you. So yeah, that's some of the things I liked about this FBA business in particular.
Yeah, it's got a really great potential. I also noticed this listing as well when it came onto our marketplace, and having over 10,000 reviews, that's really crucial to building a foundation for an FBA business. And so that's really great that they've already established those 4.5, 4.6 star reviews for a potential buyer. It also kind of leads me into another business that I saw, listing 50641, which is an FBA business in the supplements niche. So I really enjoy these FBA supplements niche, businesses that are coming on to our marketplace. We've been seeing kind of a growth over the past few years in this particular niche, in this industry. And what's really great about this particular listing is that it has an email list with over 4,800 subscribers stored in OmniSend. So they do have a marketing channel outside of FBA that you could potentially monetize or even grow the revenue further should you have a little bit of experience with email marketing. And then also what's included with this listing in particular is it has a trademark with brand registry 2.0. It also has thousands of 4 to 4.5 star reviews as well too. So a great foundation, already building a reputation, some brand awareness on FBA with, having some great solid reviews already in the bag. And then also having that trademark to set them apart from any other competition that might come into the marketplace as this industry continues to grow and expand even further. Another great thing that this seller has done with this particular business is that they outsource PPC ad management to a PPC ad agency. So if you're not particularly, core skill set or knowledgeable when it comes to running PPC ads, you could already utilize the agency that the seller has established with the business. Or if you happen to already be familiar or an expert with PPC ads, you could possibly even take that task over or under your belt yourself and then actually decrease maybe some of the margins or maybe even increase some of the profitability, having some experience or maybe some general knowledge on how to optimize the current ads that they already have using that agency. So yeah, a lot of great opportunities, a lot of great potential that this listing has as well. And I'm sure that any potential buyers that are looking at this business can also see the value in what the seller has established as well too. And that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Opportunity Podcast. So we hope that you've gained some valuable insight to the opportunities that digital acquisitions offer. And if you click the link in the description or visit empireflippers.com/marketplace, you'll be able to find more businesses just like these currently live on our platform. So if you've enjoyed the episode, be sure to leave a comment and subscribe to the channel for more great content that's released every single week. So until next time, we're your hosts. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Sarah, and thanks for tuning in to the Opportunity Podcast.